Hello all, I'm Wadabra. Welcome back to Adastra. In the last episode, Marco had been expertly avoiding everyone in the palace for the better part of 2 weeks, until Cassius bursts in to have Marco serve him and Virginia out in the garden. While Cassius and Virginia talk, they don't consider Marco intelligent enough to understand what they're discussing, and so Marco overhears the whole thing. He learns about the unrest in the Empire, with some corrupt officials not distributing funds to the people appropriately. Virginia notes that the people in these areas also seem to elect officials based on their cult of personality rather than their policies. Cassius' solution to this is to get rid of all of the elected officials, abandon their children if need be, and rule directly as a dictator over an isolated moon. While discussing the stretch drive depletion, Cassius practically admits that he's the cause of the problem, while happily using the resulting unrest to further his political machinations, even if that means permanently losing access to the stretch drive. Amicus then takes Marco to the throne room to practice their dance for the first trial. We learn the story of Drusus and Mira, how the Wolven Empire had in the past abandoned their parent and siblings and were set adrift, alone in the galaxy. It wasn't until Drusus came along and convinced the people to reconnect with their parent and siblings that the wolves were able to enjoy 10,000 years of relative prosperity, an amount of time that seems to have just come to an end. That's the recap. Please remember to like and share this video for the glory of the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. And as always, content warnings and a link to my Patreon can be found in the description below. Let's get started. I'm immediately hit by a wall of humid warmth, steam wafting out through the open door. I follow the wolf inside, my skin immediately growing sticky and hot, making me wish that it was a swimming pool instead of what I assume is a giant hot tub. The wolf starts to strip off his clothing. I've been needing this all day. Also, excuse my nudity, but the water isn't kind to clothing. Otherwise, I'd keep the underwear on. I shrug. It's not like I haven't seen it before. Right. The wolf lays his clothing down on one of the benches, his nude, sweaty form obscured slightly by the steam. He stretches, arching his back, his thick body thinning out a bit as he does. His dick also sticks out quite a bit, and even though I might have seen it before, the shameless display is a bit much, and I have to look away while I slowly strip off my own robe. You're joining me, yes? Yeah. Good! I think you'll really enjoy this. It's very hot, but you'll get used to it. Amicus walks up to the edge of the pool. There are 2 methods. Either get in slowly, or all at once. And with that, the wolf jumps into the pool, practically cannonballing into the center and sending up a huge wave that washes over the sides. The water that creeps up onto my feet is hot enough to make me flinch. Amicus comes back up, his fur plastered to his face as he gasps and lets out a strained yell that makes it sound like he's in pain. Ah! Ow, 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 ow! Are you all right? I walk up to the edge, feeling the hot water under my feet. Fine. Just getting used to it. And now I am. Amicus grins up at me. I stand there in my underwear, frowning down at the water. Come in, it feels good. That didn't look like it felt good. Quit being such a flower and get in. It's only the first few seconds that are painful. Flower. the main insult used by the wolves when attacking someone's masculinity. Well, I guess you do have a really low pain tolerance, so I start to dip a toe in.
Hey!
Amicus glares up at me, then grins, and I know that look well by now. Hey, don't! The wolf glides up to the edge of the pool, with only half of his muzzle sticking up from the water, like an ominous, furry shark fin. I start to move back, but that's when Amicus suddenly rises up out of the water, stepping onto an underwater bench along the edge of the pool that I hadn't seen. He wraps his arms around me, his hot, fur-plastered body squeezing against me for a moment, then squeezing even harder as he physically lifts me off the ground and falls back into the pool. I only have a moment to try and fight the wolf off, uselessly pushing against his bulk before I'm plunged into the steaming hot water. For a moment, I wonder if I'm going to boil alive. But as soon as Amicus lets go of me and my head breaks through the surface, I can already feel the sting wearing off into a pleasant warmth. I cough a few times, making a face at the salty-tasting water, spitting it out.
Ha 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 ha! See? Not so bad if you do it all at once.
I spit out more water.
Ah, bad taste? Don't worry, it's just the minerals in the water.
I shove a wave of water into Amicus's face, sending it right into his open mouth. He coughs and spits, choking on the water I'd just forcibly slammed down his throat.
Well, you ass!
The wolf paws the water out of his eyes, looking ready to try and splash me as well. He sees me also at the ready, though, hands up to my chest and ready to send another wave into his face.
Well, that's enough roughhousing, I guess. Stuff like that is best left for the lake.
Hey, you started it. Amicus ignores me, instead moving to sit on the underwater bench. I do the same, sitting a foot away from the wolf, enveloping my face in the steam that rises off the water.
Doesn't this feel good?
Now that I'm actually paying attention to the sensation of the water, I have to agree. The heat seems to seep through my skin and into the muscle, sending a pleasant shiver up my spine, even though I'm completely warm. Yeah.
I need to do this more often. All of this official business nonsense is starting to weigh on my mental capacities.
Is it really nonsense?
For the most part, it really is. So much useless etiquette and protocol. Sometimes I completely understand what it is Cassius dislikes about the current way of things.
What way of things?
Oh, just the way politics work. Never saying what we're actually thinking, using coded language. It slows everything down. But I know that there's a reason for it. It keeps things civil and peaceful. Mostly.
And Cassius would do away with that.
He would do away with many things. Current political protocol being one of them. It's one of the main reasons he's so popular.
Well, you seem to kind of agree with it. Getting things done without all that official business nonsense in the way could be a good thing. Amicus sinks lower into the water until it's up to his neck.
Remember the story I just told you about Drusus and Mira?
Yeah.
Well, whether that story is true or not, he was the one that started the way we do things to this day. Before him, well, we had a string of populist emperors, and the results were not great from what I've read. Honestly, I completely understand what it is that makes Cassius appealing to the people, and it's something that I sometimes want to do myself. The only thing holding me back is history. time and time again, whenever a leader like Cassius has come around, it only results in a weak, isolated empire.
Well, from what little I've heard, isn't that how it is now?
Well, yes, but that's because we've never fully transitioned into an outward-looking and outreaching empire. Drusus started it, but it's taken us 10,000 years to get here. It was much worse back then, and that's what Cassius wants to go back to. I intend to take some of the final steps so that we may join the other siblings on the journey to parenthood.
Oh, so that's the goal for everyone? To become a parent?
Yes, and to continue the spread of our culture beyond the galaxy.
So what makes you a parent?
When we can travel to other galaxies in a practical manner.
Oh, so why not just use the stretch drive for that?
It's not possible to harness enough power to use the stretch drive for such distances. The parents have a different method, but they haven't told us how, obviously.
So, are you close to doing it?
To intergalactic travel? No.
Is anyone?
Well, there are rumors that the Chemians are on the verge of it. It wouldn't surprise me. It's assumed that they already know how to use their own stretch drive.
This talk about the stretch drive reminds me of something. So, when I was out serving Cassius, Amicus growls softly in his throat as I remind him. Well, they were talking about stuff. About the stretch drive depletion or whatever.
Oh?
Yeah, so apparently no one knows why your parents stopped talking to you guys? And Virginia was saying that you might never leave the star system again?
Oh.
I frown at him.
Well, that was rather presumptuous of her.
Is it true?
Well, no. I mean, sure, it doesn't happen often, but they stopped immediately after Father's death. There's no other explanation than that our parent knew that there would be an issue with the emperorship. The stretch and contact with our parent will be re-established once I become emperor. I promise you that, Marco.
Amicus says it with his usual confidence, but that doesn't settle the anxiety in my stomach. I sigh in frustration, closing my eyes. Why is everything so complicated with you?
What do you mean?
If you'd just tell me the actual truth about everything that's going on, I wouldn't feel like I'm being hit over the head with something new every other day.
Marco, stop worrying. I know things seem unsure, but it's only because of the precarious position our empire is in right now. Once I become emperor, things will settle, and we will figure out how to get you home.
Amicus sets a paw on my shoulder, and I turn to look at him, my expression probably still gloomy.
I will get you home, Marco. That I promise. And even if the stretch isn't immediately restored, I will find a way. Even if it means making some sort of deal with another sibling. Like the Chemians.
Amicus frowns at his last statement. Still, that does set me at ease, and I place a hand on his paw. Thanks, Amicus. Amicus's very serious mood dissipates, and his ears come up as he smiles.
So you're feeling relaxed again? That is why we're here, you know.
I smile. Yeah, I guess so.
Good.
We fall into a bit of a silence then, and I lean my head back against the ledge of the pool, letting the warmth take over my body. It makes me feel heavy and tired, but good. My head slips off the ledge a few times as I doze off a bit, each time waking up before my head can go into the water. Amicus notices the third time this happens.
Sleepy?
A little.
Lean against me so you don't make the bottom of the pool your new bed.
I hesitate.
Don't worry, we already share the same bed.
Amicus stretches an arm out over the ledge behind my head, not even looking at me as he does. I get the weird feeling that I'm in a movie theater and my date just tried to casually rest his arm on the back of my chair. But my head feels even heavier than the rest of my body, so I give in, letting it rest against Amicus's massive bicep and shoulder. I close my eyes, but then crack them open just a bit to look at Amicus. He seems to be trying to stifle a smile. We've had a few moments like these. At this point, I'm not sure if it's because he likes me or because he sees me as some sort of actual pet, like a cat curling up in your lap. I don't have much time to give it much thought, because I start to fall asleep again. I'm not sure how long I'm asleep, seconds or minutes, but that's when I hear the door open. It's not a loud sound, but Amicus jumps, which makes me jump. We both look toward the door. Neferu stands there, his eyes on us, that same smile on his face.
Oh, imagine running into you again today.
Again, Neferu talks directly to me. Without waiting for an answer, he strides in, his paws busily tugging at his loincloth.
I'm sorry. I've come to the baths every day for the past week, but I've never encountered anyone.
He strips off his loincloth, now only in his undergarments.
I was beginning to think it was never put to use.
He starts to unwrap said undergarments.
I found that strange, considering how incredibly relaxing the water is. It's such a great way to clear the mind and meditate.
He unwraps his underwear, the cloth tied in a way that looks much more complicated than my own.
Not that I mind. I always enjoy good company and conversation.
I have just enough time to notice the anatomical differences between Amicus and Neferu before I look away, feeling awkward staring at someone I barely know in the nude. I'm not sure who he's talking to either, whether he's moved on from me to Amicus, or if he's still exclusively zeroed in on me. Either way, Amicus answers while I stare at the steamy water.
I see. I also enjoy the baths. It's just that we tend to be so busy these days.
Oh, I imagine.
Neferu's voice gets closer behind me as he speaks, his soft footsteps barely audible.
Being adrift without an emperor can really hamper an empire.
At this point, it sounds like Neferu is standing just over me, and I can only imagine what else is just over me. Amicus is craning his neck, looking up at the jackal.
Well, we do have an emperor, just not the official one. Yet.
Indeed.
I hear a soft splash next to me, and out of the corner of my eye, I see one of the jackal's legs dip into the water to stand on the bench, followed by the other.
Ah, that's nice. I took a rather long walk in the gardens today. It's left my paws rather sore. This is a welcome reprieve.
Amicus grunts next to me, then actually pulls me in a bit with his arm. Neferu then gently hops off the bench to submerge himself up to his neck. He lets out a soft, drawn-out sigh, his eyes closed before he pulls himself up onto the bench, right next to me. Amicus lets out a sigh of his own, though this one is much shorter and very annoyed sounding.
We don't have baths like this in our palace. I might request one, though, once I return home.
Again, Amicus barely responds, letting out a half-hearted grunt. At this point, the wolf has his arm completely around me, practically pulling me into his chest. It's awkward, and we sit like that for a while, maybe about 5 minutes before Neferu finally speaks again.
So, how long have you been here, Marco?
I give a start, then look up at Amicus. One of his eyes twitches, but he gives me a short nod. 2 week. Again, I have to hold my breath to stop from laughing at my caveman speak. For some reason, it's incredibly hilarious, even when the situation is totally serious.
So you need permission to speak to me. I did not know that you were so strict with your slaves, Amicus.
Amicus coughs in surprise.
He's my pet, not a slave.
Oh? Maybe it's a lingua issue. But from what I've seen, there's very little difference. You do enslave your children, after all. No?
Amicus is quiet for a moment, and I look back up at him to see him staring at the jackal, his mouth open.
Are you all right?
Excuse me, but I'm finding your questions a bit pointed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been told our way of speaking can be a bit blunt by your standards. But consider that the topic of slavery is simply always pointed.
Well, why don't we move on to a less pointed topic then?
Of course. So, Marco, what is your species? I must say that I've never seen your kind before.
Amicus's arm tightens around my shoulder again, but he doesn't say anything, staring straight ahead at the other side of the pool. Simeon. Neferu chuckles next to me.
You know, you don't have to speak in such a simple way to me. I already know that you can converse well enough.
I stiffen up, but Amicus jumps in for me.
What are you talking about, jackal?
Oh, are we already jumping to informal language? Well, I'm simply referring to his intelligence, Wolf. I'm confused as to why he's downplaying it for me.
Well, I don't know how you know anything about him. Come, Marco, let's head back to my room.
Amicus stands and pulls me up, but Neferu stands with us, reaching out for one of the white towels.
And that is why I'm trying to make conversation with him. But if he needs your permission to do anything, including speak, then maybe I should leave your slave alone.
Amicus turns on the Chemian, not bothering to hide his anger anymore.
He is not a slave. Please refrain from calling him as such.
If he isn't, he should be able to speak freely.
He is able to speak freely, jackal.
Then I have to wonder why he asks your permission and stupefies his speech. It's all a bit odd, isn't it?
Again, I don't know how you know anything about him.
Alex told me.
The jackal grins, and I note that he's using Alex's shortened name. Amicus stares in surprise.
So don't worry, Marco. You can speak without worrying about what I might learn.
Neferu sets a paw on my shoulder, and Amicus's hackles raise. Gently, but firmly, he reaches out to move Neferu's paw off of my shoulder.
Please, do not touch my pet.
Oh, so he needs permission to be touched as well.
Amicus steps sideways, partially blocking me from the jackal's view.
What is your concern with him, Neferu?
I'm simply interested in intelligent species that I've never seen before. And well,
Neferu reaches out over Amicus's shoulder, touching my hair and rubbing it between two finger pads, similar to what Amicus sometimes does.
he is a fascinating looking...
I start to move my head away, but before I know it, Amicus has Neferu shoved up against the wall, one paw on his chest, glaring into his face.
I said not to touch him.
His voice is low, almost too quiet for me to hear. I want to jump in somehow, maybe push Amicus towards the door so we can just leave and not cause an interstellar incident, but they're both so big and intimidating.
Oh, right. Sorry. I keep forgetting that he's not a slave with the way you treat him, needing your permission for everything.
He doesn't.
I step forward then. Well, you need my permission. The statement just sort of slips out of my mouth, my irritation with the jackal growing along with Amicus's. Neferu's eyes widen for just a moment before his smile returns.
Ah, so it is true. I knew I saw intelligence in those eyes.
Despite having a canine that's a good deal larger than him, pinning him to the wall, Neferu seems quite calm.
You know nothing of the way I treat him. And please do not call him a slave again. It is an affront to his actual status.
Again, my apologies.
He looks at me.
May I touch you in a friendly manner in the future? A paw on the shoulder? An embrace even? Chemians are always physically intimate.
I stare at him. No. Amicus snorts with satisfaction, blowing back some fur on Neferu's face.
Now, kindly leave my pet alone in the future. He's very busy.
Again, this language that implies that you own him. It's confusing to me.
Amicus growls, but Neferu doesn't seem to notice the warning.
I suppose it's only natural for a slave-driving race such as your own. You believe you own everything and everyone lower on the hierarchy.
Amicus's eyes widen, nostrils flaring.
What? I'll have you know that they are servants, and I do plan to change... Never mind. It is not your place to criticize my empire.
Neferu seems to take some interest in what Amicus just said, pausing for only a moment before speaking again.
Your empire? Didn't you say someone else was acting as the emperor?
The empire belongs to all wolves, but I'll have you know that I will become the emperor, Jackal. And keeping that in mind, you should learn to hold your tongue if you want to establish an alliance.
Ah, but does the empire belong to the servants, who mine your natural resources across the dozens of planets in our galaxy?
What is your issue with me? Or are you this rude to everyone you meet?
The jackal is quiet, and Amicus just growls at him, waiting for an answer. That's when I realize that Neferu isn't even looking at Amicus's face. He's looking at... And now that I'm looking at it, I realize that it's looking a lot bigger than usual.
You know, I heard rumors that the emperor's son was a tail raiser. But honestly, I wasn't expecting you to use this moment as an opportunity. Did you simply want to get your paws on me?
In one smooth, fluid motion, Neferu spins into Amicus, thumping his back into the other canine's front, making the big wolf grunt and puff air into the top of Neferu's head with an oof sound. Neferu leans there against the wolf, holding onto his big paw while the other comes up to tease Amicus's chin. Amicus looks surprised, but he doesn't do anything to push the jackal away. Meanwhile, the jackal's rear pushes firmly up against Amicus's crotch. Amicus seems frozen, staring down at the jackal. From what little I learned about Adastran slang on the TV, Neferu had just implied that Amicus is gay.
If you were interested, you only had to ask. I know that woven ways of flirting are rather aggressive, and even though we jackals do things differently, I can adjust.
At that, Amicus glares and roughly pushes Neferu away, sending the jackal to stumble against the wall. He turns around swiftly, his grin still in place.
Oh, did I get the wrong idea? I just assumed after you groped my chest and became excited.
Neferu gestures down at Amicus's crotch, the wolf's erect cock still waving around a bit after the jackal had spun away. Immediately, Amicus covers himself with both paws, glaring.
I did not. And you were the one to touch my pet without his permission.
Amicus looks around for his underwear, snatching it up and beginning to tie it on. I quickly grab a towel and my robes, feeling completely confused as to what the hell just happened.
Again, I thought he was your slave. But you're right. I should have asked for his permission. His fur was simply mesmerizing, so I forgot myself for a moment.
Neferu turns to me and bows.
Good day, Marco. I wish you luck in relieving your master's carnal desires.
Neferu gestures at the fumbling wolf as he tries to tie on his underwear correctly.
And to you, Amicus. Again, if you're interested, you only need to let me know.
Are you joking with me?
Neferu is already striding off, grabbing up his own underwear and loincloth as he does, not even finished tying it on by the time he's walking out the door. We both stand there in silence for a bit, staring as the door slides shut. Then Amicus grabs up the rest of his clothes with a growl, turning to me.
You all right?
Yeah, of course. What?
Come on.
And then, Amicus is walking off even faster than Neferu had. I quickly follow, not bothering to put on my robe since I'm still pretty wet. We walk down the hall, Amicus muttering under his breath the whole time.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. How would he have the nerve? Arrogant Chemian ass.
As we make our way toward Amicus's room, I go over what just happened in my head. It seemed Neferu was making some kind of point about slavery, while at the same time taking that strange interest in me. On top of that, the obvious sexual tension between the two of them was really odd, especially the way Amicus just stood there and let Neferu rub up against him while he was clearly hard. Is this just how these aliens hit on each other, with all that bizarre macho aggression? If it is, then I don't like it. But that doesn't matter. I'm not here for that kind of stuff anyway. I just need to get home. But at the same time, there's a little spark of jealousy in my chest at the thought of Amicus being interested in Neferu. I don't know why, but the way he'd treated me at the pool almost seemed like flirting itself. And then to immediately have eyes for Neferu. As we walk into Amicus's room, I can't help myself. So, is that the woven way of flirting? I ask it casually, trying to act like I don't mind.
What? Definitely not. That damned jackal was assuming quite a lot.
I mean, I feel myself blush. You were getting kinda hard while you had him pinned against the wall. I mean, I'm not offended or anything. I'm just curious about the culture. If that's how you guys go about things here. Amicus sighs heavily.
I suppose wolves have a reputation for being aggressive when it comes to courting a mate. But those days are long gone. The jackal was simply relying on dated stereotypes.
Okay. I adjust my robe a bit, the cold air of the room seeping through my still wet underwear. Not to pry too much, but are you gay? Neferu seemed to imply that. Amicus freezes, staring at me. He doesn't seem to know what to tell me, like he's afraid of what my reaction might be. I remember then how stigmatized homosexuality is here. Homophobic slurs are used a lot in the films I've seen, including tail raiser and cocklicker. It's weird because males seem to be pretty intimate with each other, kissing and holding paws being common between close friends. However, there are lines that aren't crossed, and actually being gay was looked down upon, which is what Neferu accused Amicus of being. I quickly try to reassure him. You know, it's a fairly accepted thing on Earth these days, and I have no issue with it. If you are, you can tell me. Amicus goes on staring at me for a little while longer, then sighs.
I have a preference for males, yes.
He winces right after saying that. Hey, it's fine. Like I said, it's pretty well accepted in a lot of places on Earth. But it explains why you were getting hard in front of Neferu.
Listen, it wasn't what I was intending when I first grabbed him. I was trying to defend you.
Ah, I see. Amicus blushes all over again. The wolf turns away and walks over to the sofa before slumping into it, leaning his face into a paw, looking frustrated. What's wrong?
Well, that jackal for one. And, I don't know. Are you disgusted with me now?
Why would I be disgusted with you?
I don't know. You must see past incidences in a different light. Like the massages and wrestling. And the dance. I promise those are truly pet duties. And I was only having a bit of fun at the amphitheater. And I only did what the dance called for.
I shake my head. I think you've been really good about not taking advantage of me at all. It's fine. Amicus looks at me, unsure.
And you never have to do those things again if you don't want. I'll understand.
I raise a hand up. Seriously, you're fine. Amicus looks away, looking relieved, but still ashamed.
I'm sorry, it's just something that's followed me for most of my life. I had an incident happen several years back, and it's created a lot of rumors about me. The people aren't very interested in having a tail raiser as their emperor.
Amicus finally looks at me.
So I try to keep it quiet so that it might be forgotten. Thought it mostly was until that Chemian mentioned it.
Amicus growls.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I suppose it was something I should have told you, considering how close quarters we've been living.
The wolf looks so dejected, so sad. I decide that I should tell him. You know, I'm gay too. Amicus snaps his gaze back at me, eyes wide.
What?
I feel my face turning red. I'm the same. I like guys. Amicus squints at me, like he can't believe what I just said.
Are you making fun of me?
What? No! I'm telling you so you don't feel so bad about it. It's fine.
Oh. That's quite the coincidence.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you for telling me. That isn't easy to do. At least it isn't for me.
I'm the same. I slowly walk over and sit on the sofa next to the wolf, feeling slightly awkward about our little coming out conversation. Amicus still looks a bit uncomfortable, but at least he doesn't look sad anymore. So, since we're talking about all of this, what was Neferu saying about me helping you out with your dick? Is that a pet duty too?
Well, yes it is. But again, I would never ask that of you.
Does Alex do that? Amicus pulls a face.
While I'd rather not think of my brother in such a situation, yes, he does.
But does that mean your brother's gay too?
No. Well, not as far as I know. He doesn't have a preference for males. Isn't that what makes you homosexual?
I shrug. So I'd just give you a handjob or something? I can tell that the lingua had no trouble translating that to Amicus, because he immediately blushes again. I squirm, wondering why I'm asking so much about this topic. I'm curious, and I already know that I'm attracted to this wolf. I'd given up on denying it a while ago.
It can involve a lot of things. I mean, if you want to do it, I have no objections. But it's your choice.
Amicus sounds tentatively hopeful, and I realize that he actually wants it. It seems that every day I go further and further with this wolf. I laugh, partially at Amicus's expression, and partly because of the absurdity of this entire situation. How about if we win the dance trial? I'll think about it. I'm speaking without thinking. Amicus is quiet, then nods.
Sounds fair.
I try to think of something else to talk about, still shocked at what I just proposed. So, what's the deal with Neferu? Why'd he do all that stuff in the bath?
I honestly have no idea. It was very strange.
Do you think that's his way of furthering an alliance?
Not if he has any common sense. I thought he was going to be friendly, considering he knows I'm open to the alliance, unlike Cassius.
I lean back on the sofa, thinking. Maybe he was just feeling you out. Amicus smirks at that.
You could say that. Anyway, I don't know how to feel about him. I'm thinking of just telling him that I'm not interested in the alliance unless they send someone that has more tact.
Amicus glances at me.
What do you think?
Well, I think if he's the only guy you have to establish the alliance with, you should try to work with him. I mean, this could be your best chance if you're willing to put up with him. And he seems to have the hots for you, so that'll probably help you, honestly.
Maybe.
But I don't know. I'm not a politician.
But you are smart.
Thanks.
Anyway, I'm off to my shower.
The wolf starts to stand up, and I do the same. Do you need help?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I want to show him that things haven't changed, that I'm not scared of him now that I know his secret. He looked so devastated when he told me. And even if Amicus was the one to get me into this mess, I know now that he's a good person and doesn't deserve to feel like that. I mean, I've seen your junk already, so no surprises there, right?
I suppose not. If you're sure.
I'm sure. To decide things for the wolf, I walk into the shower. Amicus isn't far behind. I dream a lot the night before the first trial. I can't remember most of it, but in the last bit, I'm in the throne room, surrounded by dozens of wolves, who I assume are the triumvirates. Kato sits on the throne, watching over all of us, his chin on a fist. Meanwhile, Amicus is in the center, doing some type of breakdance. He's athletic and light on his feet, before throwing off his cape and doing a handstand. Then he spins on his head for a while as the wolves around him cheer. Even Kato claps reluctantly. Meanwhile, Cassius has his paw to his mouth, realizing that he's been beaten, his paper bones incapable of withstanding such incredible moves. Then I wake up. I open my eyes to see the dark outline of the ceiling above me, the lights automatically coming on to a dim, yellow glow. I hear Amicus's soft snoring next to me and look over, seeing that he's flat on his back, mouth open and hugging one of his many pillows to his chest. I roll onto my back, feeling the anxiety of the upcoming trial return. After a while, I whisper up at the ceiling. "Calm, what time is it?" Calm whispers back.
1:30.
So I have at least 3 hours left before I can get up and get ready. I close my eyes to try and get more sleep. It's hard though, mainly because my future could be determined today. Amicus told me that we really only need to win this trial to win the whole thing. Because if we win tomorrow, that means that Cassius will at least have to partake in the combat trial, if not outright lose if we win the second trial. And according to Amicus, Cassius has absolutely no chance in Pugnu combat, and he knows that. While he might still participate in the second trial to save some face, he'd have to withdraw from the third, otherwise face outright humiliation. So, if we win tomorrow, I'm almost guaranteed a way home. The thought that this whole fiasco could be over soon brings mixed feelings for me. While I'm going to go home when I get the chance, I can't help but feel a little sad at the idea of leaving Amicus and the palace. We're good friends at this point, and the thought that I might just get dropped off and never see him again? I sigh and listen to the wolf's rhythmic snores, the sound so soft and gentle that, rather than keeping me awake, it starts to lull me back to sleep. And again, I find myself floating in that wide, vacuous conscience that seems to bleed over the boundaries of any sort of individuality. I don't panic this time. I'm used to the feeling, knowing that it's just a dream, that it will pass. I also sense that other presence above me, even wider than I am. They've been following me around since I got on that ship. Knowing that someone else is there calms me further, and I wait, wondering if they'll talk to me again. They do.
I am still curious.
I try to talk back this time, ask them what they're curious about exactly, but I don't have a mouth to speak with. They seem to hear me though, and in response, I sense gentle amusement mixed with fascination?
Many things. But once again, I'm afraid I have to keep it short.
I wait expectantly.
Do you feel that Amicus would be capable of his duties as Emperor of Adastra?
I feel like I know him pretty well by now. And he's definitely better than Cassius. But can he lead the Empire? I really don't know.
I see. Perhaps you need more time. There is still much more to learn.
The presence above me starts to dissipate. And so do I. Welcome to the After Reading, where I briefly discuss some highlights from this episode that I found interesting. This episode builds nicely upon the characterization we got of Neferu in the last part, where he was making a nuisance of himself by simply treating Marco like an actual person instead of a glorified slave. This characterization was surprising to me the first time I read it. Neferu is the second son of a pharaoh after all, so one would expect him to act more like Wolven royalty, or human royalty. But so far this is not the case. He seems to genuinely care about the well-being of others, and is revolted by the wolves' slave-driving ways. He knows that Marco is downplaying his intelligence, and he's experienced Amicus's hostility towards him every time he tries to interact with Marco. So, when he runs into them in the bath, he takes the opportunity to really grill Amicus about his treatment of Marco. Because, from Neferu's point of view, the situation looks bad, and if this is the guy he's going to be trying to form an alliance with, he needs to know that he's actually on the level. So, I've come around to really liking Neferu. He's got a lot of heart behind his flamboyant ways, and he seems genuinely concerned for Marco's well-being. Next, we have the coming out scene between Amicus and Marco. I think this is done pretty well, and the way Amicus recoils and is suddenly worried Marco will retroactively look at all of their past interactions with suspicion mirrors the fears that plenty of real-world gay men have felt following anti-gay propaganda pieces like the 1955 short film called Boys Beware, which was re-released in color in 1973 and then again in 1979, where gay men are said to be sexual predators afflicted by a sickness of the mind, and are shown going out grooming and molesting young boys. This sort of fear-mongering led to the mass distrust of gay folks and the development of bullshit policies like the gay panic defense, which was a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card that made it socially acceptable for heterosexual persons to kill gay people with little blowback. As is expected in these sorts of environments, it's easy to build up internalized homophobia, and this makes even doing normal things with other people, especially people you're friendly with, feel dangerous. So, while on the one hand we have Cassius, who expects Alex to do all of his associated pet duties without a second thought, Amicus is shown constantly being concerned about the optics of what he's asking Marco to do, even though these things were set in place via tradition. Amicus even retroactively feels like he should have told Marco sooner since they were sharing the same quarters, as though him being gay was some sort of shameful and terrible secret. Thankfully, Marco is quick to let Amicus know that he doesn't think of him any differently, leading to Marco's own coming out moment. And this leads into the last point, the supposed coincidence that Marco and Amicus are both gay. We already know the bizarre series of circumstances that brought Amicus and Marco together, the way the lingua kept Marco from killing Amicus on the ship, the mirroring of Drusus and Mira, and now the mysterious dream voice concludes that the two of them need more time together. At this point, I think it's obvious that this was all pre-planned by the parents, and these two are just pawns being manipulated by cosmic forces that neither of them fully understand. So, what awaits Marco and Amicus at the first trial? Find out in the next episode of Adastra. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a like, share it with fellow degenerates, and leave a comment for the almighty YouTube algorithm. Until next time, thanks for watching.